My name is Christopher Reichert. I'm the executive chair of this event. I'm also director of the MIT Sloan Boston Alumni Association, formerly the MIT Sloan Club of Boston. We're very happy to have you here for the 10th annual MIT Sloan CIO Symposium. I'd like to thank our sponsors and the organizing committee, but in particular I want to thank the Center for Digital Business, who is our co-organizer for this event. And David Verrill is down here, and they've been with this event since day one. I've been here for 8 years. It's amazing how time flies. It's run by a volunteer committee, and I can't believe that after this is now our first decade is complete, and we're really excited to have nearly 700 attendees coming to this event. Kresge is an unforgiving theater in that there's a lot of space around you, but in some ways that's better than being at Fenway where there's never comfort in the seats, so at least there's that. So every year we bring together leading thinkers and academics to talk about the issues that you're facing every day in your work. And this year we're focusing on the transformational CIO, architecting the organization of the future. Many of the speakers here today have been with organizations that have had to fundamentally change to remain vital. And it's probably true for your organization as well. I've been reading of late some research on habits, and I thought it related to today's topic. If we look at some of the topics of the panels we're looking at, with the CEO panel, they're going to talk about powered influence during the process of innovation. The CIO panel is going to talk about driving innovation and managing expectations. The healthcare panel is going to grapple with process redesign. There's a panel on transformation, potential of social business. And at the end of the day, Andy McAfee is going to talk about his research with Erik Brynjolfsson about the company of the future, findings from an unevenly distributed future. So it's a lot of, change is the constant, right? And, if you woke up today and the same way and got showered and dressed and drove the same way and are checking your phone in the same kind of habitual way, be afraid, be very afraid if you embracing change is not something that comes easily. Well, maybe, I think it's maybe not too afraid, but that brings back to the power of habits and how the role of a habit can bring to our ability to confront and embrace or reject change to varying degrees. There are good habits and there are bad habits, and so one of the things I keep thinking about is I should have paid more attention to John Sterman's class on system dynamics when I was back at Sloan. But I've also been reading about internal family systems, and one of the elements of that whole theory is that if you can find one little element, it may not be obvious, could be conscious or unconscious, subconscious, that influences something in your life, and you can make that change, then you can make changes to habits much more readily than if you just try to force it through in some way that's not obvious to what change you need to make. I was also reading about an Army officer who was assigned to a particularly difficult village in Afghanistan a number of years ago. And one of the problems was that the town square, every afternoon or regularly in the afternoon, there would be riots in the town square. And so here he was assigned to somehow bring order to this village. And they had videotape of the whole process. And so he spent some time observing the videotape and the process. So what would happen is that in the middle afternoon, people would start gathering in the square, and they would come in small bunches and be spread around the square. And throughout the afternoon, the density would increase. And so there were people, they were bumping up against each other and becoming restless. But around 4 or 5 o'clock, the food trucks would arrive. And so people would start getting hungry, and then they would just go down to the food truck and they would fill themselves up with dinner. And around 6 or 7 o'clock, all of a sudden a shoe would be thrown, a fist would be thrown, and all hell broke loose. The riot would start, and that was that. Then they have to pick up the pieces. So he asked the chieftains if there's any way that they could just keep the food trucks away, and they didn't quite understand why he said this. So the next time, around 4 or 5 o'clock, the food trucks did not arrive, but sure enough, everything else was the same. The same habitual pattern was in motion. But around 5:30, people started, getting impatient. That they were getting hungry. They were not paying attention to each other. By 7 o'clock, the plaza was empty. So a seemingly, unobvious decision made a huge difference in the patterns and habits of the people in that village. So I think that I'm hoping that today's panels will give us insights into the how of change, not just the what of change. And so we've put together panels that talk about power and influence and the leadership role that CEOs, CIOs, and the academics can give us insights into that as well, into how we can bring about innovation and that sometimes painful process through ways that are not necessarily obvious. So with that, I'd like to introduce our event chair, Kathleen Tétrault, who will continue with the proceedings. And thank you all very much again for coming to our 10th annual MIT Sloan CIO Symposium.
So can you guys see me above the podium? I always wonder if I should get a little step here, but I don't. So my name is Kathleen Tétrault. I chair the symposium. Really feel privileged to do so. And so we'd like to welcome you all. And I'm going to tell you a little story that's going to talk a bit about the people I work with on this great event and kind of how special they are. But so, believe it or not, in January of last year, I wasn't able to walk. Okay, so. And I know that seems amazing, right? Because here I am, right? I can clearly walk now, but it's true. I had just come out of major surgery, and so after the surgery, it was months before I could walk again, before I could drive. I mean, I had to kind of relearn everything, right? And so the kicker of that is that in December, just 1 month prior to that crazy surgery, I had been named chair of this event. And so, I got the chairperson's role and then immediately went into Johns Hopkins. Okay. And, what I have to say about the team is that, despite that and despite the magnitude of the challenges that I had, nobody here ever thought for a second that this event would not be perfect, right? And so I basically, as I started to recover, I just started leading meetings from my hospital bed, right? And what's amazing is that this remarkable team really pulled together in that context and got both the event and me on track so that we had a great event last year. And so this is really a remarkable team of people, and so I'd like to recognize them now. So if anybody, come on, is anybody in here from the organizing team today, other than you guys? David, why don't you stand up here? So there really is a huge team. I think they're out running around. But so I'd love to recognize the team. I'd love to recognize David Verrill, who comes from the Center for Digital Business, who co-sponsors the event with us, as well as the MIT Sloan Club of Boston Alumni Association, as well as our sponsors and partner organizations. So before I talk about the agenda and what we can expect from our sessions today, I wanted to announce our 2013 MIT Sloan CIO Leadership Award winner. So this winner was announced at a private dinner last night, but we want you now all to please recognize Scott Blanchette. If Scott is in the audience, are you in the audience, Scott? If you are, can you stand up? No? Okay. So Scott is the Senior VP of Information and Technology Services for Vanguard Health Systems, and he delivers services to a diverse portfolio of health and healthcare-related organizations. So it's more than 30 hospitals, 5 health plans, 3 lab companies, 1,000 clinics, emergency and critical care companies. And he's done some really amazing work in this space, so we're really proud to recognize him with our award. And so, woo, thank you. Thank you for whoever started clapping. I appreciate the liveliness. And so now we're starting a new day. And it's not just any day, but this is a day that's at MIT. And this is a campus where cutting-edge technology really meets business expertise. And I think everyone here today has a rare opportunity to take part in the creation of the enterprise of the future, which is how we really came up for the theme for this year. So in our fast-paced organizations, the CIO must carefully navigate not only the technology playing field, but the entire changing business enterprise. And nowhere else will you find this many high-caliber senior technology leaders in one place, in one day, discussing and revealing solutions to these issues than here today at our symposium. Our theme, as Christopher mentioned, is the transformational CIO, architecting the enterprise of the future. And so we're really focusing on how to lead the technology team within an organization to not just execute with excellence, but to truly create organizational value, right? So it's all about taking it to that next level. So this morning, our 3 major panels are going to showcase the perspective of CIOs, CEOs, and academics on that. And then our lunch breakouts cover technology and healthcare, why every business is a digital business. And then we'll have 3 tracks of an afternoon panel ending with a keynote on cloud and a closing keynote by our friend from the Center for Digital Business, Andy McAfee. We follow up with, where's Anton? There's Anton, with the Innovation Showcase Award and reception afterwards. So we're all looking forward to that. And so I expect that all of you will leave the symposium this evening really armed with actionable insight on how to embrace changes that are caused by economic, social, political, environmental, technological forces, and really help you lead your organizations on an increasing adaptive and upward path. And so that is my hope for today. That's, I think, what we'd like to accomplish. And so feel free to come up to me at any point during the day and let me know how we're doing, because we would appreciate that. And now I'm going to turn it over to Professor Glenn Urban, who's chairman of the MIT Center for Digital Business. Glenn.
I think my job is to get us back on schedule, so I'm going to be really brief. This is 10th year of this conference, so it's really been great. It's our biggest public event, and it's been a big success to relate to industry and faculty here at Sloan. So particular thanks to Kathleen and Christopher, and if we could give them one more hand, a great job of organizing. Just a quick word on the Digital Business Center. This is a research center centered around the Sloan School. We have 20 sponsors who do cutting-edge research with faculty on major issues, and you'll hear some of that today through this conference. Those sponsors include people like Cisco and HP, P&G, GM, and some of the leading-edge people like Google and IBM. So I think you'll have a great day today. Great industry leaders, great faculty coming together, a lot of new ideas. I'd like to also highlight the Innovation Showcase. I think the startup firms that come out of the entrepreneurial spirit of MIT are really exciting, and about half of those have ties to MIT. So I hope you'll enjoy those disruptive kind of startup ideas. And for those of you who have been here before, probably half of you who have been here before, you know how to handle MIT. Those who haven't, it's a little bit like the proverbial fire hose of ideas. So I would advise you to try to carry away 2 or 3 big-time ideas and see if you can make those influence your organization as you get back on track. So enjoy your day, and thanks again for coming.
Hello, my name is Michael Palmer. I'm the co-captain of the CEO Keynote panel. And I'd like to introduce the panel, starting off with moderator Joe Chung, who's managing director at Red Star Ventures. Joe Chung will be leading us in a discussion about the use of power and influence during the process of innovation. And joining Joe today will be Alon Gromonsky of Blazemeter, Kazuhiro Gomi of NTT America, and Dr. Tom Layton of Akamai Technologies. Please welcome me.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Michael, Kathleen, and Chris for setting all this up. This is a real pleasure to be addressing the MIT CIO Symposium. When Chris and Kathleen asked me to talk about or moderate a panel on innovation and the CEO, and I sort of stretched that out to be sort of the CXO kind of role, I sort of smirked a bit, because I thought, well, isn't that sort of an oxymoron, like, and obviously there have been some fantastically innovative CEOs. In fact, when the CEO of Apple came out and pushed for this amazing revolution in a device that was going to have handwriting recognition and voice recognition and tell you where to go and tell you where to eat, kind of manage your whole life and be this incredible transformative platform that would really just take over the world, and failed unbelievably because, of course, that CEO that I'm referring to wasn't Steve Jobs. It was John Sculley and the Apple Newton, if you guys remember that thing. Brilliant, fantastic vision, incredible ideas. Talk about innovation all over the map, right? But something went wrong in that process. If you want to be generous, you just say, hey, just a little bit too early. 20 20 years too early on Moore's Law's curve, which is pretty considerable. This is back when we used to measure clock speeds of CPUs in megahertz, not gigahertz. So pretty big difference. It's like one of those how many is a trillion? How many billion is that kind of thing? But I think there was also a real hubris around that as well, as you may also recall. Mr. Scully, and I hate to be ripping on the poor guy, I actually quite like him, also appointed himself CTO of Apple at that point. And I think there's some kind of interesting moral lesson in that. But again, when you take Steve Jobs, take Bill Gates, you take a few of these folks aside, and when you look at the history of innovation in large organizations that are really big enough to have a multi-level hierarchy of personnel, you often, I think, in my opinion, innovations tends to be somewhat inversely proportional to titles. So I think the challenge, therefore, is how do the people at the top and the person at the very top encourage innovation without steering the whole battle in the wrong way. Another way of looking, there was a time when if you were a king, you had to be in front of the cavalry charge. You were the guy who was going to be riding over the hedge first and taking all the arrows and clubs and all that kind of stuff head on. And of course, nowadays, modern generals lead from well behind enemy lines. So I guess the opening question I have, and what I'd love to do, and by the way, I'd love to have each of you, as you take this question, talk a little bit about your personal role. Obviously, we know what your companies do. We know what a CEO is supposed to do. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you see that more day to day, and a little bit more about your personal role with regard to innovation development. But I guess the question is, do you see your do you think a CEO with regard to innovation should be at the point of the cavalry charge or back marshaling? Do you believe that is innovation sort of inversely proportional to title? How do you handle this risk thing? Is it more the Hippocratic oath? Is your role to do no harm and at least allow innovation to flourish in there? So I'll just pass that first question off, and maybe, like I said, you could talk a little bit about your personal role with regard to innovation in your own organization. Do you want to start, Alon?
Sure, my pleasure. First, I want to say thank you for having me. It's a great honor to sit in front of this in this crowd. I'm Alon Girmonsky. I'm the CEO of BlazeMeter. BlazeMeter is basically a software as a service startup. So in terms of innovation and change, I see that the market and the space in general is undergoing a change. We are kind of in the place that we are offering innovations to CIOs and customers. So for me, innovation is kind of the way of life. As a startup, we must be very quick, very fast, go to the right, go to the left. And the way to do it, the way to surface above anything else is by being innovative. And what we do is we provide this innovation to the CIOs of larger organizations, so for them to actually, drive the process in their organization.
Kazu, do you want to?
Okay. My name is Kazu Gomi. I'm the CEO of a company called NTT America, which is an affiliate of Japanese telecommunication company, NTT, in short of Nippon Telegraph and Telephone Corporation. Just a quick introduction of NTT. That's, I think, amongst all the telecommunication companies in the world, we are that largest companies measured by the revenue size. So as you can imagine, we have a lot of people, we have a lot of systems, and a lot of momentums when you want to make a change. So this topic today is going to be very interesting from that perspective. With regard to the innovations and how you should play the role as a CEO, like I said, my company's, when you look at the overall worldwide perspective, we have over 300,000 people. And and many systems we have, and basically, a lot of the customers of us are relying on us to run their systems. So for us, it is very important to make sure that the systems are running all the time, and that's more important than sometimes to be so innovative. So as a CEO of a company of this kind of large organization, it is very important to be conscious about the balance between that to be innovative, be a cutting edge, versus that making sure everything's okay. So I definitely, by the way, my background is much more of R&D. That's how I started working for NTT to begin with back in 20-some years ago. So I tend to be personally to be more cutting edge and innovative, but I always kind of sort of put myself kind of back and then hold on, and make sure everything's okay. But I think by and large, many of the CIO, I'm sure in this room, has that kind of sort of, not dilemma, but I think a challenge that you need to be conscious about the balance between the innovations and the stableness. I guess I should stop here.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm Tom Layton. I'm the CEO at Akamai, and I've sort of been on both sides of the coin because I was co-founder and chief scientist at Akamai for 14 years. I think the CEO has an important leadership role to play in terms of setting the strategic objective, saying, that's where we're going. And the CEO has an important role to play in supporting and celebrating innovation. And there's a lot of ways the CEO can do that. The CEO has power of funding, the power of the pulpit. For example, at Akamai, we have a meeting every quarter following our quarterly earnings release where the entire company comes to the meeting, if not in person, then virtually. And so we run something called the Innovation Showcase, where we will take 3 innovative projects and put the team that was responsible for the project on the main stage. And they'll describe their innovation and the impact that it had on the company. And this has proved to be very popular. It's a way to celebrate innovation and let the company know that innovation is alive and well. In our business, it is absolutely vital. We're in a very fast-moving space with some, very big entities out there. And so we have to move fast through innovation. Innovation's a tricky thing. Innovative ideas are like sparks, literally. And it's really easy to extinguish them if you're not careful. And to make them be successful, you got to be fanning the flames to get a fire going. And we looked back and discovered that we had some ideas that now are very important to our business. We're finally bringing to market, but we had them 5 years ago as sparks, and they got extinguished. Somebody who was influential said, "Oh, that's a stupid idea," or "That won't work," and they didn't get the time to flourish, and so we were 3 years late. Bringing something to market compared to where we could have been. And so we put procedures in place, because there's so many people can say no. We got some procedures in place where people can encourage ideas, get them airtime, because maybe somebody else will hear that idea and say, oh my goodness, that's an important idea. And so we have, an innovation board we put together whose job is to do this. They can't say no. Yeah. They can only encourage the things that they think are worth encouraging.
Well, to follow up on that, Tom, there was an analytics guy, not particularly high level, but very, very, very bright that I ran into working at Intuit, and he introduced me to this concept called the hippo principle. He said, the problem with IT decisions is that they tend to be made by the hippos. We're kind of like, what are you talking about? He sort of laughs and says, hippo stands for the most highly paid person's opinion. So whoever happens to be in the room at that moment, who's most highly paid, that's whose opinion counts. And of course, that's often the person who's least far from, or most far from the real nitty-gritty, all the details that got obscured and summarized, and also may or may not be particularly data-driven. And of course, this was a web commerce division of Intuit, so everything was really all about the metrics and the data. So I think that when you talk about creating procedures and processes who can only say yes but can't say no, that's an amazing start, because clearly you see that all the time where a and a really great idea can be killed just by someone's frown. It's like everyone looks at they're reading your faces and they're saying, oh well, no, we're not doing that anymore, and that might have been the greatest thing. But Kazu, you brought up a really great point, which is nobody really, I think, notices you very visibly unless something goes drastically wrong, and your customers will probably notice you a lot at that point, but not in a very good way, right? And I think traditional CIO roles have been exactly that, right? There's a slow, steady improvement. There's kind of something you look back at in 5 years and say, hey, we did this, and we created these efficiencies, and we've done these amazing things. But day to day, your job is sort of not to be noticed. So how do you manage that tension within your own organization? Because clearly, if you do nothing and keep doing everything at a constant level of innovation, you're going to be surpassed.
Right. Yeah. So I think you hit the important points. I guess traditionally, from my perspective at least, that many of the CIOs are customers, and their priorities typically are certainly price of the vendors and the steadiness, the reliabilities and all that.
A lot of signals.
But certainly it's really changing. I've seen some of the survey results of so many CIO, I don't remember exactly, but massive amount of CIO have been asked the question, what's your priorities? And the recent survey shows that, I think one of the top things that the CIO is tasked by the CEO of their companies are how to bring the company's value up. Those IT systems innovations are really the driver of the company's value. So they definitely ask. I've been seeing that the changing over the last maybe 3-4 years gradually. They still kind of beating us up by the price and stuff like that, but they're also asking a lot of good questions about how do you make it more efficient? How do you make my product of our customers that the more appealing to the market, and how IT system can contribute to that. So I don't know what's the driver for that. Maybe the CEO of all that great companies putting that kind of pressures to the CIOs and all that. But certainly I can see that changing start happening. So that's a great thing.
So that's a really fascinating point. You're talking about innovation itself becoming a selling point. So you're drawing a bridge between the IT role and actually marketing and sales. And a lot, I imagine, in your business, that's a much tighter connection.
Yep.
But do you want to talk a little bit about how you think about that piece?
Yeah, we live, as I mentioned earlier, we live innovation, meaning this is all we do. I think with the range of people in this panel, you get like from the left to the right. And we represent first our differentiators from the competitors, our innovation, is our innovation. And we deliver this innovation to the CIOs. For them, it's kind of the cool effect. We deliver something innovative so they can do faster, bigger, better. So where I'm standing from my point of view of the market is innovation, is the king, especially when you take software in general. Today's software, is also kind of the king. It's much more important than what it was like, 5-10 years ago. And the CIO role in that place becomes, much more significant. Because the CIO and software, once upon a time, a website was only for awareness, brand awareness. Now, usually you sell something through the website, you get leads through the website. So again, website is CIO, software is CIO. Being innovative and leading this change, puts the CIO in a dramatically more significant place.
So Tom and I had a little similarities. We were both the technical co-founders, chief science, chief technology officers of. I used to co-run our technology group, one of the e-commerce platforms out there. It got acquired by Oracle a couple years ago. If I screwed up and broke something with our software, Best Buy went down, and okay, so people couldn't buy large screen televisions for a day or something. And they're bad. Don't get me wrong, and I apologize to Best Buy as well in the room. But I mean, not earth-shattering. When you screw up, the internet goes down. I used to have a pager under my pillow and stuff like that. I don't even want to know what you got in your pillow. Amazing that you're creating. I haven't heard of that type of process that showcases innovation within an organization, and I love the idea of people who can say yes and can't say no. But still, how do you manage that fundamental risk, the ultimate IT CIO-like risk of breaking the entire internet versus really pushing forward on initiatives that are going to make a big difference to your business?
Yeah, well, there's a big difference between innovating and just throwing the code out there. In fact, they have safeguards that I can't put code out there anymore. So, the internet is safe.
Yeah, they stopped after a while.
And in fact, we had to do a lot of innovation to figure out how do we deploy code? How do our customers deploy the metadata so that they can update their sites in real time and make it do what they want to do? And there was a ton of work around that to make it be safe, because every hour we've got hundreds of customers changing the configuration of their site in our platform. And so they have to have access to do that and to deploy that safely and quickly. We deploy software, for any major system every week. And so there's a tremendous effort around safeguards to deploy it slowly. And to catch any even minor problems along the way so it doesn't get out to the entire global platform before it's known to be safe. But that's separate from getting cool new ideas, figuring out new services, and then putting them into production code. So you need both, and sometimes there's a tension because you just like to get it out there right away, like in the old days, the developers had the root keys and out it goes. Obviously, we don't do that anymore. There is an interesting story though related to this. A very large social networking company, and I won't say their name because it's probably not fair, had a situation where one of their developers had a cool idea and threw it out in the platform and brought them down. And the head of the platform in this company had an interesting dilemma. Does he fire the guy? In the end, he decided not to. They gave him an award of a T-shirt. And they gave him the award because it was such a clever idea and the users liked it so much that it was a big step forward for the company. So even though he brought the platform down, it was considered a success. Of course, then I asked him, well, what if Akamai brought his platform down? Would we get a T-shirt? He said no. We'd get fired or a lawsuit or something.
Fantastic. What about you, Kazu? How do you look at that tension? And also, I'm kind of curious for yourselves. So I'm thinking back at ATG, we were at its peak, maybe a 1,500 person organization, maybe at its average, more like a 1,000 person organization. We never had a CIO. I think we probably ought to have had one, looking backwards. But because we were such a technology-driven company, we kind of thought the people on the pure tech side, we knew better than everybody else anyway. So I suppose I sort of doubled up on that role and all that. But I'm kind of curious, within your own organizations, how do you direct your own internal CIO roles, your own internal IT roles, and encourage them to think more innovatively? Do you find that you're more or less tolerant of risk than a typical organization?
Yeah, I find myself sometimes typically those my CIOs, IT organization tend to be more conservative. I think because of that, the nature, I guess, that I think we always be conscious about this up and running all the time. So I think because of the nature or because of the personality of my IT organization, I don't know, but they tend to be a little more conservative typically. So what I can do, I've been thinking and I've been trying to do is that I myself be that first user of anything anything new idea, anything cool coming up, anything cool in the market, I'm the first user to be and bring into the company and show that the rest of the people that this is what you can do, all that kind of stuff. I'm sure that many other people do similar things.
And how about you, Alon? What do you think about that I guess question of culture, really, right? Even clearly you're running a smaller, much more nimble organization that really embraces that. But the companies that you sell to and are working with presumably are a little more old school. So how do you feel that you have to try to change their mindset a bit to be able to deal with the rapid change? Because clearly, if you're innovating at the pace that you talk about, then you're breaking things. I mean, innovation equals risk. You only have to look at the venture capital model, which is obviously trying to create the most amount of value out of innovation. And what's their yield on average? A couple percent, that kind of thing, right? So in most organizations, I think in most IT organizations, if you had an initiative and it had a 10% chance of success, you'd never move forward. You would never do it. But of course, that's venture capital says 10% chance of making $1 billion. We're there. So, what do you think that? How do you deal with your customers when you know in advance you're going to break something?
Actually, I'm in the field of breaking. No, seriously. We basically deliver a performance testing solution. Mm-hmm. You can hit your website with 1 million hits per second, and guess what? Usually the sites break. The site breaks. But talking to the point, the train is running, meaning that the traditional vendors that already sell and the difference between ourselves and more traditional vendors is that we provide agility. Okay? We provide to do the same task that you would do with the traditional player, but it would take you about a month to do it in under 10 minutes. So the benefit is obvious, but you need to do some convincing because it's kind of magic. This very established vendor tells me it's complicated, it will take 1 month to do it, and I need engineers and stuff. And I say, listen, you can do it yourself in under 10 minutes. So the burden of proof is on our end. So the way we approach it is try it out. It's so easy. It's it's kind of go to the web, sign up, don't talk to anyone. Do it, at home, at night, on the weekend. Try it. If it works, put it into the process. If it doesn't, fine. No harm's done. You didn't change the existing infrastructure. But if it does work, if it does save your time, your developers' time, then consider it. Consider doing the change. So it's about allowing or enabling people to try without any kind of risk. So I think this is the point to go with.
Tom, I'd love to hear some stories now. I'd love to we want to know the dirty secrets of Akamai. I'd love to.
Can you be more specific?
Back when you gave some really intriguing examples of showcasing innovation and finding some of those individuals who probably didn't have very very high titles, but who'd done something kind of amazing and bringing them to the front and encouraging that. I'd love to hear stories about how that success stories and also stories where things didn't go the way you wanted to, or ran into problems, and you wish you'd done something different.
Yeah, the HIPPO principle is great, and we try to foster a culture that's the opposite of that. That it doesn't matter who said it, what matters is what they said, and to take the ideas on that basis. And I can remember examples, back when we would have in the early days, very young employees, a 21-year-old engineer who would engage in a discussion with the then CEO in his 60s, very, very famous person, and carry the day. And then the CEO would say, that was a fantastic outcome because it was the quality of the idea that matters. It's a culture that I think also comes from MIT. It's the same kind of philosophy at MIT. It matters what you say, not your seniority or rank. I think that's really important. For example, with the Innovation Showcase, the entire company is invited to nominate presenters. And then I'll sit down with a couple of folks and pick the 3 that we think would have the most, have had the most impact or the coolest. Sometimes it's not even a product and probably never will be, but it was a really cool idea and a really cool demo. And this is one involving couch commerce, where you're watching something on the TV, and as long as you take whatever device you have and scan in the QR code on the TV, it now synchronizes with the TV. It can be used as a remote control, and if you've created a companion site to what you're watching on TV, you can actually buy things or do a simulated buying of what you're seeing on the TV. Now, we're nowhere near a product there, but it was such a cool idea that we could demonstrate it that now we have it in our NOC in the headquarters. And as media companies come through and e-commerce companies come through and carriers come through, they see that and they go, wow, we want that. Yeah. And it gets their imagination going because, it's like product placement on steroids. Just a very cool thing. So I think that's important to do, certainly for a company like us, where innovation is everything. Even if it's not a product and you're making $0, to be able to showcase interesting ideas to the ecosystem, I think is important.
And how much do you think that these ideas, the idea of doing that kind of showcasing and encouraging the most junior person to stand up and share their ideas, even and overrule or out convince someone who is quite a bit higher up on in the hierarchy, how much do you feel that kind of came out of your academic background and this sort of institution? I presume that's something you drove personally.
Well, yeah, I think that comes from the MIT culture, and our first 95% of our first 20 employees were from MIT, mostly undergrads. So the culture started that way, and then we do everything we can to preserve it. And in this case, the idea for that demonstration came from somebody in marketing, wasn't a developer, and the guy who coded it did it on nights and weekends. He was in QA in California, but he knew how to do the things that were necessary with the microcontrollers to make it be a reality. So it was totally outside the normal framework, and now it's something that every employee knows about and a lot of our partners know about. And it's just, the desire to do something cool, and that's really important for us.
Kazu and Alon, do you have any interesting stories or examples of both positive and negative? Everyone loves to hear about the failures too.
I think, well, I don't have such cool ones, but I have a couple of things that I can think of. I have a team who runs basically the internet backbone, and the people in the group, I think early 2000, back in 90s, I guess, late 90s, they basically came up with the idea of VoIP systems. We run the internet, so we have the backbone, but they need to talk to each other. We have a global network, so from US to Australia, or US to Japan. So they need to talk over the phone. It costs us something, even though we also run the telephone systems, but they cost something else. So engineers came up with this VoIP systems, and VoIP was there, but they are the early adopter, certainly, and they just wanted to test something cool. At the same time, they can save money for the company ultimately, and then I thought that was good. But one thing I just wanted to add in terms of the innovation is that I think back in a kind of context to this typical CIO, I think many people are so typically bound to make sure, that once again, that the systems are running. You have to answer many of the questions from the field people on a desktop machine or whatever. So they are busy. They're very, very busy day in, day out, and they are called in the middle of the nights and stuff like that. So I think if you are always running like that, it's really hard to think about the innovations. So one thing I forgot to mention when you asked me the question earlier, I think we have to make sure that, not probably everybody, not all the time, but we have to set aside some time for them to think about those innovations and just to set yourself outside of the normal day-to-day business a little bit. I think allow them to think that way. That's very important, I think, in my opinion. Yeah.
So it sort of occurred to me that that all of us on stage here actually come out of the technical R&D side of the world, and it makes me think of a concept that was introduced to me recently by venture capitalist Antonio Rodriguez over at Matrix, and he talked about moral authority, that certain CEOs, certain leaders have this inherent authority that comes from all the years they spent in the lab, all of their background, all of being Steve Jobs, for example, and that authority allowed them to change the direction of the company very dramatically, or do things that nobody else could do. Someone could just say, look, I don't care what the data says, I don't care what everyone's opinion is, I don't care what the safe course is, we're doing this, and have everybody say, yep, we're doing that, and just go like that. Bill Gates, for example, when he turned Microsoft on a dime when the internet happened, and Microsoft should have gone the way of they should have lost their way in the desert like IBM did back in those days, and they didn't, and it was an amazing thing. And I was this is just when I was building my company, and we watched Microsoft heading off kind of on this divergent path away from the internet, away from e-commerce, away from application servers and the whole infrastructure world that we were building, and suddenly they just made this 90-degree turn and came right on at the entire business and saved themselves from being irrelevant. I wonder about that moral authority and how important that is to have. And what's the advice for people who don't have that, who came up through perhaps more traditional management hierarchies and are now running companies or running organizations that where you have this huge dilemma between being innovative and staying competitive over the long term, and also trying to avoid risk, being 99.999% up all the time. Tom, you have any thoughts about that? What do you tell people who aren't Tom Layton and are running? running
I think it is important for the CEO to lead and lead from the front and say, this is where we're going as a company. And in high tech, I think it is helpful if the CEO has the technical background, understands the marketplace, and has been with the company for a long time, so they really understand it.
Do you exercise your moral authority from time to time? Do you ever get up and say, look, forget you all, you're wrong, we're doing this?
I don't say that. No, that wouldn't be good. But I do say, this is where we're going, and I want to be sure we're all on the same page, that we're going in this direction. That, I think, is vital. But I'm thrilled when the 21-year-old engineer comes along and teaches me something, and tells me I'm wrong, and then he's right, and he proves it or she proves it. I'm thrilled when that happens. So it's not a situation that I'm right because I'm CEO or I'm the founder. That's not the case. It helps me have in the background, to make good decisions. I think in high tech that's helpful, and ultimately it's my job to lead from the front where we're going. But getting the opinions, of the smart folks, in the company is vital there. So it's not that, oh, you're wrong and I'm God or something. No, that would be very bad.
Yeah, I agree that I think as a CEO, and especially with the technical background, all of us here, I think we have an advantage to lead these technology-centric companies. But I agree with you that we are not deciding every single thing. We are basically here, open the door, and we can listen to the new cool idea coming into. I think for us, I guess, CEO to make an easier judgment is certainly if the presentations or demonstrations being done to us under the context that we can really reflect to the business, right? If not, you have a problem. So certainly there are a set of people I can certainly regard highly. They are, when you think about it, they're really good at those presentations sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so that will help me make a decision very quickly. Yeah, this is something. Take this company to that direction that I would like to take that. So that the consciousness about that, that's very important, and especially I guess that probably in the more smaller startup companies, probably not so much to that case. But if you are working in a larger organizations, that is very important. That you have to make it more under the context of the whole thing.
I think what makes a CEO a good CEO is understanding, where we are and what we need to do, but more importantly, to reflect that. Because once people see that, okay, this guy understands and he knows how to get there, so they will follow. And a CEO is lucky because he's been doing this for a long time. He's been doing this one small thing, like managing Akamai, huge company. I remember when it was a startup many years ago. But you do it for a long time, so you get good at it. The problem is, when you are getting used to being right, you kind of think you're right all the time. But it's never a 100% hit rate. So I think he needs to understand what he's doing, where he's going, to reflect it, but also understand that, okay, it's not 100%, and he needs to hear other people and hopefully accept that they're right, and leverage this.
So the question I have, Alon, is, how important is getting buy-in then? And I remember the first time I really realized that I had no experience whatsoever running a large organization was, we grown very rapidly. We went from 20 people to 200, and we brought in all these VPs from the outside world because they told us we should, and it was a good idea. I mean, it helped, but I remember we had this meeting where we decided we were going to sunset one of our products. And I decided we were going to sunset this product. And we sat there, and I said, okay, look, and so we're killing this thing by the end of the year because, in my opinion, the app server market was dead. There was no point in, we'd already licensed some of the technology to Sun, who, sort of competitor or partner. And I said, we're exiting this. 6 months later, I discovered the project was alive and well and bigger than ever. and so I called everyone into a room. And I said, what the? No, I didn't know. I can't repeat that. I was furious. I was just livid. I was 29 years old, and I just couldn't believe this. And what I got back, and they were ready. They knew I was mad, and so they had this 100-slide PowerPoint deck on why this thing could not die, and they bored me into submission. And thinking back on that, I realized okay, that was I handled that incredibly badly. I didn't get buy-in. I didn't get around. I didn't do all the things that I now know needed to be done if you're actually going to kill a product. But then there's a huge tension there because if you try to, if one person, if that one 21-year-old gal has this amazing idea, and it's controversial and risky and might cause a division of your company to no longer be necessary, for example, getting buy-in on that would be very difficult, if not impossible. It almost requires that moral authority to say no. We're going to do this because this is the future. So how do you navigate that, and how important is it to do that circling and gathering and frankly politicking that now at our age we're pretty good at?
Yeah, leadership means getting buy-in. If I'm running off over here waving the flag and the other guys are all over there going that way, that's not leadership. That's a disaster, in the making. So it is important to get buy-in, and you got to, explain why it's the right thing to do. And that's where, having, in our business anyway, a technical background helps, having been a founder helps. There's some, willingness to trust, or at least to listen, And of course, we do encourage people to, draw their own conclusions. That's part of the culture. It's the quality of the idea, as we said, not who's saying it. But at the end of the day, you need the team going in one direction. That's vital.
a little bit different tangent, but I think it's related to that point. But I think today the IT system is so complex. It is, when it comes to the point of merging or the two companies or three companies together, there's a lot of problems of which system to be sunsetted and which system to be the main one. And that decision is 100% politics a lot of the time, not so much on the technical questions.
Same in Salesforce.
Yeah, well. So I think nowadays, but still, all the divisions of that, the merging companies or divisions needs to be all running once again all the time. So I think back to the innovations and decision making and all that. First of all, from the innovation point of view, to allow such migrations and integrations of different systems into one, I think there are many tools out there nowadays, and many of them are really good. I think it is really important technology nowadays, and it continues to be. I think given the complexity of that, the systems and organizations, I think is further growing from here. So that's great. And when I look at that ourselves sometimes and the customers, that those decisions on how to make those integration happening, how to make that the migration happening, can take very, very long time. And if it takes a very long time, typically that means that this project is not going well, obviously. Right. So then the leadership is really important before the tech project is going too long and get out of control. Somebody has to stand up and say, this is the way to go, right? So I think that's something I see kind of related to your point. I guess a little bit tangent once again, but.
Do we have time for some questions from the audience? So just to open it up, I'd love to, yeah.
Hi, I'm Gary Beach. Thank you. I am Gary Beach, CIO Magazine. On the stage last year, Yoichi Ito, who's the director of the MIT Media Lab, I think I got his quote correct. He said he was talking about cultures of innovation. And he said, cultures of agility will eat cultures of strategy for breakfast every day of the week. So my question to each of you as CEOs, what's your sense? What's more important? Where does a company get its bigger bang for the buck long term? Having a culture of innovation that is rooted in strategy, or a culture of innovation that is rooted in agility, sort of the basic research kind of principle?
Yeah, agility is fast, especially, in our business, in a high-tech space where, companies are, rock stars one day and dead within 2 years. Agility is critical. It has to make sense within the context of the strategy. But I think agility is really critical in our space, in high tech.
So I think the question is more, my answer to your question is that the innovations, I think, has to be embedded into the organizations. And obviously the organization is run by the people, so that's where the culture is coming from. But I think it is important to foster such culture, so make sure that there's enough innovative people to make sure those innovation is continue happening. So as a CEO or the leaders of the company's organization, you have to be conscious about it if you really want to continue your organization, your company to be innovative. So that's my answer, I guess.
I think that going back 5 years ago, agile was kind of a buzzword that everyone wanted to adopt. Today, what we see that agility is basically a way of life, or a way of basically work, maybe. In a competitive environment, not being agile, meaning you simply die, you simply vanish. And to be agile is not simply by saying, I'm agile, I'm doing things. You need a process. you need support. You need an ecosystem to support, agility. So from where I'm looking at, agility is the way to conduct business and is the way to do things these days, and there's no second option.
Any other questions?
So kind of on a similar vein, when you're managing something that's more established and you have some product lines that are making you money and in more established markets, then you have these new innovative, exciting kind of toys that are going to make you very little money this year, that kind of thing. What's your advice for kind of keeping the focus on both? And and do you actually separate organizations to do that? I guess you think back to the IBM doing the original IBM PC in a totally different facility kind of story and things like that. So how is that translated to today's world?
Yeah, there's probably several tiers. You have the big established businesses, and obviously they're in business units, and handled the traditional way. You can have the Horizon 2 or middle stage businesses that maybe are a few percent of your revenue, but have the potential to be tens of percents of revenue. And so we actually give them their own business units and separate lines of funding, and there's not very many of them. Maybe one or two that you can really afford to do that with. And you can have more ideas, things at the early stage that aren't even products yet. You can have more of those that you can be funding to do the early tests with, and then see which ones look like they're going to be successful in the marketplace to get to the middle horizon too. So I think you treat them differently at the three stages, and as you go higher up the food chain, there's fewer of them that you can afford to focus on.
Neil Wasserman from Time Wave Analytics. One of my areas of interest is how behaviors propagate in organizations, and I was very intrigued by Tom Layton's model for the quarterly event. And so the question I have is, that's an example of how behaviors are synchronized, how people marry individual creativity with the kind of collaboration that requires, in my view, synchronization of events across an organization, or at least across sub-portions of the organization. So the quarterly event that you characterized with the innovation showcase and all of that is an example of that kind of synchronized behavior. It's kind of an innovation holiday, if you wish, that occurs on a regular basis. Are there other methods of synchronizing innovative processes across the organization so that one person's creativity can be leveraged across the wider social universe?
Well, at the end of the day, I think it's just promotions within the company. I think that Tom's example is also a promotion that that create this gathering and use this gathering as a promotion that there's such cool ideas, and then propagate that ideas amongst the people. So I think from that perspective, there are many ways to do that, in my opinion. Nowadays, use the social media amongst the companies, within the company, I should say, or certainly sending some newsletters, create some event to talk about that, the new ideas from somebody. I tend to do stuff like that.
Well, and to your point about setting aside time, there's the extreme example of Google, where reputedly, and I think it's really true, they really do allocate significant percentage of time just to do your own projects and try to create things. I haven't seen that being taken up by the rest of the world because they're probably just not Google. But still, it's interesting. It's a very intriguing model. Maybe maybe it's not 20%, it's 5%. But, yeah.
Hi, my name is Peter Viscuso. I'm with Black Duck Software, and I would imagine just a CIO's job is complex enough with all of the things that you have to manage. But I wonder to what extent, I see a dynamic happening more and more with IT organizations embracing open source communities, external organizations as a source of both innovation, ideas, development talent, et cetera. I know one IT manager, Tony McCarthy from Deutsche Bank, he's the head of IT for their investment banking division. He's got 8,000 employees in his group, and he talks about, I've got 8,000 people on the payroll, and yet there's this, huge open source community we might be able to tap into. And he talks about how his role is changing from developing solutions to developing frameworks of engagement. And I think that's kind of cutting edge, and I'm just curious kind of where you guys are in terms of, does that kind of strategy kind of enter into your discussions on a day-to-day basis? Is, ecosystem becoming part of competitive strategy in IT?
I think I mentioned about that you have to make sure that you can make some of the innovative people to, free up some of the time for those innovative people. I think using those open sources are sometimes along the line, in my opinion. You don't have to write the code of the nitty-gritty things. You can just embrace it so that you can, all those innovative people can focus on the more relevant stuff. To make sure that your company is to be innovative, your business to be successful. So you use that third-party organizations or the products is very important. Make sure that so that the people can focus on what is important. That's how I view it.
Yeah, I think our company is a little different than most, but we not only use it, we are part of the groups that are creating it. And there's
that's kind of more what I was kind of getting at, really extending your organization to include these external communities.
Absolutely. So it's a major area of effort for us to be really engaging and be part of that community that's contributing, to the standards and to the open source software.
I think we have time for one last question.
Morning. Ian Robertson, CEO for a pharmaceutical company. So I'm interested, you were talking about this idea of being impressed by ideas from 21-year-old kids in your companies. And I think that's fabulous, and I think people in those sort of situations are very encouraged when someone at the top of the organization is interested in what they've got to say. My question is really, how do you ensure that you are accessible to those people, or that they have time with you in your roles to be able to give you the great ideas? Because we all know they're there. It's a matter of how they get them out there to people in positions of power and influence.
Yeah, that's a great question. Unfortunately, we're only 3,300 people, so it's not like an organization with 100,000. There's a variety of ways to do that. So every Friday, for example, I have 15 people, from the company come to lunch, and it's a free-form discussion. Their goal is to give ideas of how we can make the company better and to tell me what's wrong. And they're pretty vocal about what's wrong. And that's very helpful, because sometimes, I don't know. And you start hearing the same message a few lunches in a row, and you know that's something you gotta deal with. We have, as I mentioned, the Innovation Council, and so they're sort of the 15 gurus in the company that are spread around the organizations and spread around the world, and they're identified as places to go. On our internal website, we run an anonymous thing called Ask Tom, and they can ask any question they want, and we'll publish it then along with the answer, and it can be done anonymously if you want. I spend a lot of time going to the various offices, most of which are smaller than our Cambridge office, and there's usually a social event associated with that, and people can come up while you're having a drink and just talk. And even at our recent, Sales Titans Club event, we took a few hours out where, we got, the 100 Titans together, and they got to complain and say what's on their minds. Now you can imagine that's a pretty rough group, but very valuable, because we learn things that way that, we didn't know, things that aren't working as well as they should be, or you get a really good idea and you go, oh my goodness. This is a great idea. We got to get this fleshed out some more. So there's a variety of ways you can do it, and I think it's really important, for the senior management to be engaging that way.
Great. Thanks, Tom, Kazuo, Alan. Fantastic panel. Really wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.